The grand celestial Colosseum glittered like a spiked chandelier strung between three moons, an architectural eyesore so garish it made even the most gaudy civilizations wince. Floating in orbit above the Zuxian homeworld, the arena was a gravity-defying monstrosity constructed by a species that believed subtlety was a myth and that aesthetics meant spikes, lots and lots of spikes. Capable of seating over 12 million beings with atmospheric preferences ranging from chlorine-rich fog to molten vapor, the Colosseum was a marvel of interstellar engineering and a disgrace to interstellar dignity. The Zixians ran it all. Bureaucratic nightmares disguised as sentient beings, these purple-skinned, seven-limbed officials had evolved not for speed or strength, but for paperwork. In the official Codex of Honorable Combat and Cultural Exchange, a document longer than a Plutarchian lifespan, they claimed the arena existed to resolve disputes peacefully via proxy combat. In reality, it was the galaxy's most grotesque blood sport, watched across 17 star systems by aliens who liked their entertainment with a side of evisceration. Every galactic cycle, new competitors were either offered, volunteered, or voluntold. Some came from honor-bound warrior races. Others were political prisoners, abductees, or simply unlucky travelers. Regardless, all ended up in the same death trap disguised as diplomacy. But today was different. Today, a human child was entering the arena. Not a warrior, not a super soldier. A child, a girl, no older than 11 Earth years, her coppery hair tied back in a rough ponytail, freckles scattered like stardust across her pale cheeks, and limbs so thin that several guards questioned whether she'd survive the pre-match briefing. The Zixian high executive, clad in ceremonial drapes that made him look like a sentient curtain, watched from his elevated box. "The human child enters the arena today," he announced smugly. "Let us see if their species is as resilient as their diplomatic corps claims." His aides clicked, chittered, and shimmered in agreement. To them, this wasn't a contest. It was a message. A lesson in galactic hierarchy. The child's story began in the aftermath of a failed raid. A Krelvac strike team had chosen a remote human colony on Epsilon Eridani 4 as its next easy mark. They expected no resistance. Humans were considered soft, emotional, and poorly adapted. But the raiders found something else: gunfire, traps, and a settlement that didn't crumble. The Zixians, arriving late as always, found scorched ships, stunned Krelvac, and a handful of human survivors, including one small girl. She was handed over to the Arena Commission as a representative of her species. No one consulted her. No one cared to. She was soft, small, and squishy. Perfect for an object lesson. A 17-hour meeting followed in the Xerxian committee chambers. By the end of it, 3 clerks had collapsed from paperwork fatigue, and a resolution passed with unanimous approval. The human child would fight. In the lower depths of the arena, within a containment cell designed for beasts 3 times her size, the child sat cross-legged on the floor. No tears, no tantrums. She hummed, a sound both tuneless and eerily cheerful. "She is defective," said one of the guards, peering at her with all 3 eyes. "She's the correct specimen," replied his superior. "Scan confirms it." Medical examiners ran stress tests, scanned her vitals, and poked her with bioscanners. All results came back normal. No signs of fear, panic, or resignation. Just that same quiet curiosity. She asked questions about everything. What was the atmospheric pressure in the arena? Could she have water? Why did the walls hum like a power converter? The guards were confused. She was acting like a tourist. When given the traditional survival pack, mostly ceremonial junk that wouldn't save a rodent. She inspected every item with absurd attention. The nutrition officer nearly choked when she pulled candy out of her pocket. "That's prohibited," he snapped. "It's just candy," she said with a shrug. "And anyway, you're about to feed me to monsters. I don't think snack rules matter right now." Up in the arena, engineers fine-tuned the day's configuration. This was to be a slow death. 6 concentric zones, each deadlier than the last, surrounded a central platform. First came toxic environments, then terrain hazards, then predators, some genetically modified just for this show. Watching from behind a sealed window, Kronos, a 6-eyed engineered wolf, growled in anticipation. His fangs dripped with hunger. The crowd's favorite. Bets were flying fast. 300 credits on dismemberment, shouted a Moravian. 500 on neurotoxin death, countered a plebeian. The odds of survival? 15,892 to 1. No one sane would bet on her. Except maybe that one drunk Draxian in the back booth who put down a single credit on total victory. He giggled and slurred something about human chaos factors. When the grand ceremony began, 12 million spectators from 17 systems fell into their species-specific versions of silence. The Xixian anthem, 17 minutes of industrial screeching, blared through the arena. Everyone suffered through it. Then High Chancellor Voxplex raised his limbs and addressed the crowd. "Today we remind the galaxy of its natural order," he declared. "The human child faces the trials of discernment. May her fate illuminate our truth." A platform rose from the arena's center, lifting the girl into view. She stood there, blinking up at the stadium lights, completely unafraid. Her eyes scanned the crowd. She yawned. A collective gasp. Phase 1. Survival instinct. The floor retracted around her, revealing a pit of bubbling acid. Her platform shrank. The standard response? Panic, jump, or fall screaming. She did neither. Instead, she scanned the floor, spotted the maintenance drones surfacing occasionally to test acidity, and leapt perfectly timed across them, landing on a hidden safe zone no competitor had ever found. The crowd gasped again. "Unexpected solution," muttered the announcer. "But surely luck." Phase 2. Predator Evasion. 3 Vargoyan razor beasts entered the arena. Diamond-edged exoskeletons gleamed in the light. Death incarnate. They circled. The girl waited. Then she moved. She triggered a pressure plate pattern, one only the engineers knew, causing a hidden duct to open. She vanished inside. "Is that allowed?" howled the announcer. Rulebooks were consulted. Apparently, yes. In the luxury suite, the Xixian High Chancellor's skin turned an uneasy lavender. "This is not proceeding as expected," he said coldly. Down in the ducts, the girl found an abandoned maintenance tool and grinned. Her smile was small, private. The galaxy had no idea what was coming next. By the second hour of what was meant to be a short-lived execution spectacle, the Grand Celestial Colosseum had shifted from smug anticipation to nervous energy. The child, the human child, wasn't just surviving. She was navigating, calculating, winning. In the arena control center, emergency meetings had already begun. "How is she disabling the neural disruptors?" roared Chief Engineer Zontak, his 7 digits pounding a console in frustration. "That model is designed to incapacitate creatures 3 times her mass, and she's reverse engineering it." The monitors showed the girl crouched beside a humming control node, wires and exposed circuits writhing like metallic vines. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't fumbling. She was understanding, methodically dismantling the device with fingers smudged in arena dust. "She must have prior knowledge," muttered one technician. "Impossible," said another. That text never existed outside Zixian hands. But they didn't know her story. Back on Earth, in a cluttered workshop on the east side of Detroit, she'd grown up beneath soldering fumes and the hum of old appliances. Her mother ran an electronics repair shop, and when other children played with dolls, she took apart obsolete vacuum cleaners and old phones. By age 7, she'd rebuilt a working security drone from junk. At age 10, she'd won the National Junior Robotics Championship with a drone made of scrap. Alien tech? Alien logic? Still logic. To her, this arena was just another broken thing she was learning how to fix. From the commentator's booth, the announcer's voice had begun to falter. Contestants generally do not, reprogram the structural sensors. Across the 17 star systems, viewers leaned closer to their holograms. The girl had become more than a novelty. She was now a phenomenon. Spectators stopped eating, gamblers stopped betting, bookmakers stared in horror as odds shattered in real time. In Sector 7, the environment began to change. "Triple gravity," growled the emergency response coordinator. "Crush her down. Let's see what kind of muscles she has." In the next instant, a crushing weight slammed downward. Her knees buckled, just slightly. Her breath quickened. But instead of collapsing, she adjusted. Her center of gravity shifted. Her shoulders rolled into a gymnast stance. She bent, flexed, and continued forward with deliberate, fluid movements. The crowd watched in stunned awe. The girl wasn't merely reacting, she was adapting. She didn't know it, but her years in gymnastics training had just saved her spine. Then came the Doolean puzzle walk. A dozen glowing nodes formed a circle on the arena floor. Each had to be twisted, compressed, and realigned simultaneously to disable a force field. "Even adult tacticians fail this," muttered Zontac. "She won't even comprehend it." But the child, knees muddy, sweat glistening, studied the lock in silence for 47 seconds. Her eyes flicked across the pieces, reading the pattern. And then, like someone folding a Rubik's Cube by feel alone, she began. Click, twist, snap, lock. 12 moves, 8 seconds. The gate fell. Back in the observation decks, the energy had shifted. The crowd was quiet. This wasn't the blood sport they'd paid for, but it was something better, something far more dangerous. "She's making us look like fools," murmured the lithoid ambassador. "She's 11, replied the Moravian next to him, voice dry. "Exactly. Activate all environmental hazards," barked the High Chancellor, his color now a panic-pale hue. "No more theatrics, no more games." Toxic gas hissed from vents. Temperatures swung violently, searing heat to frozen blast. Random lightning arcs crawled across the floor. Even seasoned competitors struggled under one of these conditions. The girl now faced all three at once. Yet somehow, she kept moving. Not blindly, intuitively. She ducked low beneath the fog where a narrow strip of breathable air remained. She skirted walls during the electric discharges, timing them like a heartbeat. She navigated heat patterns with the instincts of a kid who knew when a radiator was about to burst in a rundown building. They didn't understand. This wasn't a child from a sterile academy or a structured military world. She was from a broken system, an Earth neighborhood where infrastructure failed constantly, where you learned to survive chaos or you didn't. And chaos, that was her comfort zone. In the arena control room, the lead game designer leaned into his console. "We're out of prepared sequences," he whispered. "What do you mean, out?" hissed the Chancellor. "I mean, we've thrown everything at her, and she keeps smiling." Indeed, she was. Somewhere between dodging razor traps and swinging a purloined maintenance tool like a bat, she'd begun singing. The translator struggled, but one phrase kept coming through. The wheels on the bus go round and round. Several plebeians shivered audibly. "She's mocking us," muttered one Zixian aide. "She thinks this is a playground." The High Chancellor stood, robes quivering with rage. "Enough of these preliminary amusements. Initiate the final phase." Across the arena, massive segments retracted. The central platform rose, 30 meters high. Concentric rings spun into motion, each more dangerous than the last. The final challenge had begun. 6 death zones. At the far end, a glowing orb sat atop a pedestal. The victory token, untouched for centuries. To reach it, she would face phase-shifting predators, gravity wells, automated weapons platforms, toxic fog fields, high-speed laser grids, and the Kronos Wolf, a genetically perfected killing machine. No one had survived. Not one. She stood on the raised platform. She looked out at the crowd, and then she knelt down and tied her shoelaces. The absurdity was so unexpected that a wave of laughter rippled through half the arena. "You know what's funny?" she called out, somehow projecting her voice across the arena. "This looks a lot like the obstacle course at Camp Wilderness. Just, fewer mosquitoes." Silence fell again. Then the start signal sounded. She didn't run across the bridge. She jumped. Right into the moat of glowing purple metallic liquid meant to dissolve intruders slowly. "She's committing suicide," gasped the announcer. But she didn't dissolve. Instead, she swam, awkwardly, hilariously, and perfectly effectively. The thick liquid resisted sharp movements, but her bizarre froggy thrashing gave her just enough propulsion. She emerged, covered in goo, onto the edge of the predator ring. And then, like a glitch in the simulation, the unexpected kept happening. She faced the phase shifters, predators that existed between dimensions. Most prey ran. She charged them, screaming, swinging a bent pipe. They flickered into view and retreated. Evolution had not prepared them for prey that attacked. She danced through the gravity wells, using their pulses to slingshot herself across impossible gaps. In the weapons zone, she triggered crossfire traps, forcing automated turrets to blast each other apart. Through the fog, she belly crawled, again using a survival tactic she learned from staying low during a smoky apartment fire back on Earth. And the lasers? She didn't crawl, she twisted. Her body folded and bent in ways the observers didn't believe possible. She's limboing under a plasma beam," whispered the Moravian ambassador. "I didn't think humans could bend that way." "She's 11. They're made of rubber." Finally, she reached the last ring. The Kronos Wolf. It stood, towering, muscles rippling, eyes glowing. It snarled. She stopped, reached into her pocket, and pulled out a piece of candy. "Sit," she commanded, with a sudden sharp tone that rang across the arena. The wolf, conditioned to dominant signals, obeyed. Gasps erupted across the stadium. "Good boy," she said, and tossed the candy. While it chewed, she darted past. She grabbed the orb and sprinted back. As she reached the central platform, coated in goo and grime, sweat streaked down her face and dust caking her knees, she held the glowing orb high and shouted, "I win." The arena was silent. Then, chaos. 12 million aliens screamed, cracked, oozed, or fainted. Betting systems collapsed, economies crashed. One Draxian became an overnight billionaire. The girl? She just smiled. She sat in the victor's reception chamber, a throne room that hadn't seen a champion in over 3 centuries. Oversized tapestries hung limp on walls depicting past glories, most of them blood-soaked, all of them alien. The chair dwarfed her. Carved obsidian and pulsating light meant to impress press warriors twice her height. Her feet didn't touch the floor. she kicked them anyway. The ritual victory nectar, a drink that made most species hallucinate or pass out, had been served in a gem-studded goblet. She sipped it like it was a juice box. When the Xixian diplomatic team finally mustered the courage to enter the chamber, they found her lying on her side, examining the ceiling art. "That was fun," she said brightly. "Do you guys have more games? Or can I go home now?" The chief negotiator, a being who had stared down warlords and survived negotiations with sentient firestorms, struggled for words. His 7 limbs arranged themselves into a stiff posture of formal concession. "Your performance has created a unique diplomatic situation," he began. "We are prepared to offer substantial reparations to your species." "I want every human you've captured sent home," she interrupted, licking purple nectar from her fingers. "Oh, and maybe stop raiding our colonies. That'd be great." The translator stuttered, trying to find the correct diplomatic phrasing. There wasn't one. Her tone wasn't angry. It was casual, like she was suggesting a rule change in a board game. "These are significant demands," the negotiator tried again, "that require formal consultation." "Also," she added, standing now and stretching her back, "you should know I only placed 6th at the National Junior Obstacle Course Championship." The silence that followed was instant and chilling. The security chief's eye stalks snapped inward in panic. The intelligence minister's appendages curled tightly. "6th," someone croaked. "Yeah," she said. "First place winners way faster and scarier when she's mad." She gave them a cheeky grin. It was the grin that broke them. Back across the galaxy, things were already unraveling. Within 2 weeks of the arena event, a confidential transmission from Earth reached every major system. Station K7, a deep space security interceptor, flagged it with the highest possible clearance. The message was simple. "You were never supposed to believe us. That's why we showed you instead." Human Ambassador Chen. Rumors ignited. The girl hadn't been some unlucky abductee. She'd been a plant, part of a deliberate operation to demonstrate humanity's underestimated capabilities in the most unforgettable way possible. The arena hadn't just been survival, it had been a message. The entire galactic narrative flipped overnight. What once seemed like a freak event became a masterstroke of strategy. And the girl, her sticky fingers and candy wrapper trail, was now a symbol. Her image, freckled cheeks, triumphant smile, circulated faster than any ambassador's speech ever had. Within 1 month, Earth gained seats on 7 critical interstellar councils. Trade agreements were hastily rewritten. Xixians signed mutual respect treaties they'd previously laughed at. Diplomats who once dismissed humans as carbon curiosities now requested private meetings. Several warrior races began training their own youth in human obstacle course design, hoping to replicate the miracle. And deep within the Xixian ruling chambers, High Chancellor Voxplex drafted a private memo. "We believed we were teaching them their place in our hierarchy. They were showing us our place in theirs." Meanwhile, the Grand Celestial Colosseum quietly shut down combat operations. No more blood sport, no more deaths. It rebranded as a cultural exchange center. The final event hosted there, an interpretive dance-off. And the girl, she went home. Eventually. But not before leaving behind a single note on the back of a candy wrapper, framed and now displayed in the Arena Museum. "You really should have read up on humans. We're weird, but we're fun." For centuries, the Grand Celestial Colosseum had symbolized galactic dominance, a stage where strength triumphed, hierarchy was enforced, and entertainment came in the form of blood and screams. Now, it had become a museum. Visitors passed holographic displays not of monstrous victors, but of a single small human girl, mid-leap over a boiling acid pit, her copper hair flying and a grin stretching across her face. A placard beside her frozen image read, "They said no child could survive the arena." She did it with a smile. Across 17 systems, the story evolved into something mythic. Alien children asked for candy like the human girl. Military academies rewrote training regimens based on her movements. And political councils, once dismissive of Earth, now looked over their shoulders when crafting legislation that might impact humanity. But nowhere was the shift felt more dramatically than in the diplomatic corps. Human Ambassador Chen sat before the newly formed Interspecies Council, a body created directly as a result of the girl's performance. "Let me be clear," he said. "We didn't send her there as a threat. We sent her because none of you were listening." The silence in the chamber was reverent. "We asked for cooperation, for recognition, for dignity. You offered condescension and cages. So, we improvised." A lithoid ambassador raised a crystalline limb. "And your species sends its children to deliver warnings." Chen only smiled. "Some lessons stick better that way." Behind closed doors, alien intelligence agencies scrambled. Every human colony was reanalyzed. Every child scanned and documented. Because if that girl was not the best humanity had, what else were they hiding? Some species prepared for war. Others offered trade alliances laced with desperation. Still others sent their own children to Earth exchange programs, hoping to understand this bizarre species that laughed in the face of annihilation and weaponized sugar. On Earth, the girl was greeted with tears, applause, and 17 diplomatic gifts, one from each system. She gave most of them to her little brother, except the orb. She kept that. "I want to use it as a nightlight," she explained. "It's kind of pretty." In her old Detroit neighborhood, nothing much changed. She still helped her mom repair quantum blenders and aging surveillance drones. She still skipped rope. She still read comic books. But sometimes, just sometimes, she'd get a far-off look while staring at a flickering circuit board, like she was remembering something from beyond stars. "Would you ever go back?" her mother asked once. She shrugged. "Maybe, if they have new games." The final ripple came quietly. It began when a Moravian artist painted a mural of the girl mid-jump, her arms outstretched. A plebeian sculptor followed. Then a musical, The Human Who Danced Through Death, ran for 5 cycles on Zarthex Prime. Even the arena announcer, formerly a smug voice of doom, wrote a memoir titled How I Watched a Child Undermine Galactic Tradition. The dedication simply read, "To the girl who reminded us that survival isn't strength, joy is." And the galaxy? It softened. Not entirely, but a little. Enough. As for the girl, when asked in a Hall of It interview years later what her secret had been, she just laughed. "I was bored," she said, "and I didn't like their rules." "But weren't you scared?" "Yeah, for like a minute. But then I realized they didn't actually know me. They just assumed things. That's a mistake people make a lot. And aliens too, I guess." She paused. "I mean, come on. Who builds a death trap and doesn't kid-proof the wiring?" That interview was broadcast across every star system. It ended with her biting into a piece of candy and asking the host, "What one?" The host, a 4-eyed gelatinous being, hesitated, then took one. The moment went viral across 7 planets, a meme, a mantra: give the human the candy and maybe don't underestimate them next time. They said no child could survive the arena, but she did, with a smile and a story the galaxy would never forget.